now. Hi, everyone. This is Rafi. I'm here with my good friend Brian Lenski, Dr. Brian Lenskis. How's it going?
Great, great. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you. I think we crossed paths in Denver, if I remember right. I'm like,
Yes,
oh
that
my
was
gosh, you're
right at the
him.
start of the
That's
pandemic.
cool.
Yeah, right at the
Yeah.
start of
So
it.
yeah, but yeah, it might have been the year before actually that we met in Denver. I think, if I remember
Yes.
correctly. I think it was the one pre-pandemic, back old school stuff, when we can like talk to each other and not have masks on and all that stuff. Yeah. So for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I just had to have you on for multiple reasons. First of all, I love what you're doing with your clinic and with your patients, and there's a lot of new stuff there in the past year or two that you were telling me about before we started recording. And then there's also this whole question of how doctors are supposed to talk to each other and talk to the public on these platforms like Twitter. And this has been a subject of interest and relevance to you and me for a while, but I think during COVID, it's just been all brought to the forefront, really, I think, of a lot of our minds. So I think I'd love to talk to you about those two things to start off, and that should give us a lot to chew on. So tell us what you're doing with your new setup, your clinic, and how this changed, and everything you went through to make that decision to change the way you practice medicine, which is a really big deal.
Yeah, I was in standard practice for 17 years, worked 14-hour days all the time. I realized it wasn't effective. I was realizing my podcast, Low Carb MD, I was reaching more people than I could in my office because about 80% of the people didn't really care what I was saying. They said, throw me a drug. I'm like, man, we could prevent it. I'm looking long term. And they're saying, I don't want to change my lifestyle. And so it's frustrating for me because, well, the lady behind me, my wife, and, kids behind this shoulder, that's what matters. My diplomas just separate the important stuff out, but um really, I mean, I was working my tail off, and I knew the literature, and I knew what I was trying to do with people, and all the time I was counseling people, say, look, your job's killing you, you're stressed all the time, you can't have, fighting with your wife at home, all these things are affecting your health. And then I was, how life works sometimes. Ben Bickman, who's one of the most respected scientists around, we happened to be at the gym at the same time, and we start talking. I go, hey, Ben, can I ask you how to live a long, healthy life? He goes, yeah, just 5 things, right? Don't work yourself to death. And I was like, okay, I don't like this because, I was working 14-hour days, and like I couldn't take a day off. I was booked for a year straight. And if I took a day
Yeah.
off, it would take me 6 months to catch up because I would have to shove them in places, and I didn't have the time. Number two, he said, get enough sleep. I was like, great. I'm getting up at 4 in the morning if I want to get a workout in because I have to be at work, rounding in the hospital and be there. And I work downtown, which is about half an hour, 40-minute drive. If I left 10 minutes later, I'd be stuck in traffic. So I had to get up early. So I was like, Brian, like I was I got, Ben, I don't like your rules. 0 for 2 so far. 3, he goes, eat real food. I was already doing low carb and keto, and that was working out. And he goes, exercise regularly, like we're doing now. He goes, don't smoke or drink to excess. He goes, that's it. What else do you want to talk about? And I'm like, that's it. So then I thought about it. I'm like, he's right. I made bugged me because I'm like, he's right. I'm telling people, like, if I were the patient, right? If I were the patient, my doctor would look at me and go, dude, what are you doing, man? Right? What are you doing? You're killing yourself for nothing. And people, because I would be trying, like, what I would do, because, in standard practice, you have 15-minute appointments, or, maybe 40 minutes for an annual exam, and you have to address everything. And I couldn't do it. If I saw someone was going to get diabetes, I'm looking at their labs and I could see the train coming, and I would try to help them. And a lot of people just go, you know what? They didn't care. They didn't care. They go, just give me a drug. I'm not giving up my Twinkies, right? I'm just going to live my life. But I go, look, here's the consequence of that. But I would put people that I could rescue and help at lunchtime. So I would work through lunch every day. But then what would happen is all the calls I had to do at lunchtime, I couldn't get to. Then I'd be there till 8 at night trying to call everyone back, get their lab results, because I had over 2,000 patients, right? And the other thing that was
Yeah.
frustrating is my area of expertise is low carb and keto, right? That kind of lifestyle. So people were seeking me out, but I had nowhere to put them because I had no openings for a year. Like I couldn't help people that I knew I could help. And I was spending with time that didn't really want my help. And I realized, like, this doesn't work. You're frustrated because you're not effective. And I realized in the system, it was a problem. The system was, the sicker my patient gets, the more I get paid. So when I was helping people to either prevent diabetes or help, I'll say, put it into remission so I don't cause a firestorm. I prefer permanent remission rather than cure, because I don't think we actually cure it, right? Just like alcoholism, you're not
Mhm.
cured of alcoholism, you are. So anyways, I just realized I wasn't being effective, but I could help a lot of people. And the ones that I could help were like, I loved my job on those days when I knew their labs were coming. I was like a little kid ready to come in. Other people I knew, they would have a problem. So basically I said, look, it's not working. And I realized I couldn't, as a matter of fact, low carb Boca I went to for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I took Monday off flying back. And then Tuesday I went to work. I had no openings. 12 people wanted to be seen that day, like seriously, like 200 phone calls. It was ridiculous. I have the accurate numbers, but it was overwhelming. And I worked till 10:30 that night, 11 the next day, 10:30 that night, getting up at 4. Like, this is not smart. This is not good. So I really just wanted to have a nurse practitioner, but there was no room, and it was just a bad situation. It wasn't tenable for me anymore. And I realized,
Right.
and it happened to be Kobe Bryant died around the same time. I'm like, he would have given up all of his money for a few days with his family. So I just realized, hey, it's not going to work. So I gave notice, and then July, I was out in June. July, I started this practice. So this
Wow,
practice,
that
I have
was
an
fast.
hour and a half. Hmm? Yeah, just this year. So yeah, I just changed my entire lifestyle, and I'm now 2 minutes from my house, so I don't get on the. My neighbors complaining about getting on the freeway, and then I'm like, oh, how is that? Tell me, right? Because I did it for probably 22, 23 years because of residency and all that down here in San Diego. So now I'm in my community. I'm on the campus of a Christian school. I'm taking care of the kids, taking care of the faculty. Love it. I have so much fun because now I can give a talk and I can have 300 people remotely on Zoom go, hey guys, look, here's what's important, right? Instead of seeing 300 patients, how long would that take me to see 300 patients in my office, right? So by educating, I could educate more people at one time. So it's a perfect fit for me here. I'm so happy every day,
That's
and I
cool.
don't work
So,
less hours necessarily.
right. So you're not working less
Yeah.
hours, but you're doing the sort of medicine that you think is more effective in terms of the things you need to communicate to a whole bunch of people that are fairly mundane to you now because you know them so well, you know how to prepare your keto meals and how to maybe intermittent fast or how to cut out the junk and these things that you have to repeat again and again. And you were saying that you're on the campus of a Christian school, so that means you're in contact with more young people, right? In your medical practice. Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just starting out. That was kind of a side thing, I think, because they said you're here, we're here, and if you're sending your kid across the country or across the world, we have a lot of foreign
Mhm.
students. To tell the parents, look, we have a doctor, two doctors, male and female, right on campus. That's a draw for them. It's a benefit for them because we could look at someone right away and catch it, especially in the era of COVID, because we don't
Mhm.
have a busy clinic. My waiting room is empty all the time because you come and you have a 2 o'clock appointment. I see you at 2 o'clock. I'm not running behind because I'm not seeing 30 patients before you that day, right? So I have time to really get to know the patients. I have openings in my schedule. Before, I never had a place to put someone. So it was like the equivalent I was thinking was like being a pilot on the plane, and you're taking off, all your seats are full, and you have 15 people that have to get on the plane. You're like, this is tough, right? So you would
Yeah.
resent people at some point because you're like, I have nowhere to put them and they want to be seen today. They're not sick, they're fine. And but so now it's like, okay, if I can get those same people and be a AAA type model where I work hard to get you healthy and get you on the right track, guess what? Long term, it's easy for me now because you're not going to be. This is just as an aside, this is the first January in my career in 17 years, right now 18 years, that I didn't start a new medication, that I didn't have to titrate up insulin. I did not start anyone on insulin. As a matter of fact, a guy came in yesterday with 4 bags of insulin medications, blood pressure pills, and he was ready to die when he met me. Now he's running, right?
Oh
He's
wow.
surprised. He goes, yeah. And it's amazing when you see that, you think, wow, the impact we can have by educating people, but they have to buy in. So it's an investment of saying, look, let me explain to you exactly what I'm talking about. I can't just give you a meal plan, right? You need to understand the physiology. When people get it, like, you're shooting insulin because you're drinking 7 Cokes a day. The doctor that you had for the last 20 years never told you that. Like, really? Like that you shouldn't be eating dessert every night and all this stuff. So I have another lady just yesterday. I'm just telling you this because this is why it's fun for me. I'm
Mhm.
looking at her sugars because I can have, well, just so you know, my practice, I have a body composition scale, so I can look at visceral fat, which is the most important marker, right? I can do waist circumference. That's the most important marker, and they correlate, right? It's the same thing. As you lose visceral fat, your belly, circumference goes down. Weight, I'm telling you, I have people take off visceral fat, put on muscle mass, their weight doesn't change. So people give up, but I'm seeing their insulin coming down, their sugar's better, everything's getting, all their markers, triglycerides, all the stuff that I'm looking at are getting better. So I can say, hey, look, stay the course. You're doing better. You're better. So I've had people lose, I have one guy who lost 0 pounds in 4 months, and he had a unique story. but he lost 10 inches off his waist. All of his stuff got better with
Wow.
no weight loss. So people go, oh my gosh, how much weight? And he's wearing pants when he was 40 pounds lighter. And he goes, I'm wearing pants, my shirt's loose. I had to buy new clothes and like with no weight loss. So you look at that and go, it's not about the weight loss. It's really about metabolic health. So and so I do a fair amount of that where I really monitor patients every week for accountability. And, if you want to talk about that part of it, I love that part the best. But I do general primary care also. It's just not as intensive. I don't talk to them every week because I couldn't afford to do that. But yeah, so that's what I'm seeing. There's a lot of stuff like that where it's like, man, we can really impact people. Another one, just a lady came to me and her son was actually paying for it because I helped his mother-in-law come off all of her meds. This lady, she was freaking out. She's on a medication basically that makes you pee out extra sugar. So she was eating a ton of carbs. I just got her A1C back from right before she came to me. It was 10.8. Guess what? Since she's seen me, her sugar's been running 90 to 100, and she's off those meds. The med was costing her $562 a month out of pocket, right? You don't need it. And she's freaking out because she's worried. I go, watch what your sugars do. It's not going to spike if you don't eat that terrible food you're eating.
Did you say 5,200?
The medication is $1,000. She was paying $562 a month. She showed me her receipt. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. That's for the rest of your life. And they told her, you're on this for the rest of your life. I said, we'll give you off in a day because it's dangerous to be on it when you're on our, when you're doing low carb and keto, because you can get ketoacidosis. So we got to stop it. So she's like, you could stop that medicine? Like, I go, take your husband out to a nice dinner, right? Or, make a nice steak at home or salmon and use your money for that. Don't use it for drugs. So it's that mindset, I think. But people, when they're invested in and they see it, they're like, oh my gosh, it is. So like for me, like my neighbors tease me because they go, Brian, you don't work very many fewer hours than you used to. I said, yeah, I'm leaving later to come to work because I have a 2-minute drive instead of a 40-minute drive. And I could work out. I could have coffee with my wife. I can hang out with her at night and not be doing callbacks on 2,000 patients because now I have about, a little over 400 patients maybe. So it's definitely, I can give that care. So people call me at night. I don't care. How you doing, man? What do you need? You're paying for this, right? To have access is the key. In our modern medicine, we've lost access. And my style of practice is modeled after Tro Kalayjian, and we've been, we're partners on the podcast. And so he goes, Brian, you're killing yourself. What are you doing, man? You're not effective. And he was right. And I had to sit back and look at that, even though he's a young punk. He goes, look, I'm like, I rarely, as a matter of fact, probably since I probably may get, one call a month at night. Before, every night I get 20 calls because I was covering for 5 partners and it was a nightmare. So now I know my patients. It was people that I didn't know before. Now it's like people I care about and really know personally. And I know they won't call, and out of respect to me, they don't call unless they really have to. But if they're scared, that's what we're here for, So it's totally a different style. It's a total vibe that's different. And, my wife, when I get home at night, she's like, how was your day? And every day I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened. This is great. Every day she goes, before you, and that's really was one of the things that really instigated me to change was, I would come home at night, every night. How was your day? I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to talk about it. It was brutal. Like people yelling at you and it's miserable and they can't get in and you're trying to do stuff. I mean, it's really overall. I really have compassion for docs because I know what they're going through. And that's why they don't want to learn keto. They don't have time for all this stuff. They're trying to survive. They're drowning and they're trying to figure out how to keep their head above water. And that's the tragic truth. So I stepped out of that life. But one day my wife said to me, she goes, Brian, because I do a lot of volunteer work and I was in Guatemala. She goes, when you come back from Guatemala, you work twice as many hours probably as you do here. And you're always so happy. And you tell me stories for months. You go, oh, let me tell you what happened with this patient. And she goes, why is it that you love it so much there? I said, over there, I'm not doing paperwork. I'm not arguing with insurance companies. I'm helping people and they appreciate it. They want to give me a chicken or something for payment. I'm like, no, it's all good. Thank you. But people are appreciative. They're kind. They're decent. There's not this sense of entitlement. It's a totally different type of medicine. And that's how it feels now. I feel like I'm in Guatemala now, like in the jungles, helping people and not saying, oh, we're going to like titrate your meds. Here's a side effect. Here, we're going to give you this for the side effect of this medicine. I was like, let's get rid of it. And people, it's really anxiety provoking when you stop medicines because they were told you're never going to stop this medicine. It's like, that's not true. You're healthier now. You don't need it.
Right.
So yeah, it's fun every day. And so,
if you were to try to sell another doctor on this sort of change that you made and they were worried about, am I going to earn enough? How is this going to work? Where am I going to find the clients who are interested in this, the patients who are interested in this sort of medicine? I don't know where to go. Like, what would you tell them? Like, what would they need to know? What would they need to figure out really in the practical sense for them to make this shift? Because I'm sure there are reasons why they'd be reticent to change, and maybe there's a risk or financial bet that's being made. So what would you tell them if they had those worries?
Yeah, trust me, I did. I had financial security the rest of my life, really. I mean, I've struggled. Finances have been tough. I'm still paying med school loans, right? So I took a massive pay cut. So at some point you say, well, as a matter of fact, I was driving, just to answer your question, I was driving in and I was thinking, you know what? I'm doing exactly what I'm called to do. And I'm doing exactly, if I went back to my med school, I would tell people, go back and look at your med school personal statement of why you're going into medicine. Did you go into medicine to push pills and keep people just from dying? Or did you go to help people and make them healthy and give them a better life? I think most doctors, even doctors who I may not agree with their approach, is that, they wanted to help people. You may get ego, you may get, there's other things, but, money should not be the main factor, and I've noticed that, like even doing volunteer work overseas, it's easier for me to get doctors to volunteer. They're paying money to go. I pay money to go, right? I don't make money on going overseas, but I get paid in gratitude and just life experience. Like the best medicine I've ever practiced has been in the jungles of Guatemala, right? So I think at some point, and the problem is we try to get a dentist down there, it's pretty tough, right? Because it's hard to leave you think about it. Not only was I, like, for me, going to Guatemala was a massive sacrifice and it was still worth it. But I'd have to prepare for 3 weeks before I left to make sure all the meds were taken care of, all of my stuff was ordered, all that. And it would take me about 6 weeks after I was back to catch up, right? Just from that 7 to 10 days off. And that 7 to 10 days off, I wasn't sitting on the beach in Maui, right? I was working hard. So, at some point it takes a toll, it's an emotional toll. But like now, if I went for a week, I would come back and I could do telemedicine from Guatemala if I want, right? If people need me, I could be accessible anywhere in the world because I could do it all. So it's not like before. It's and in my old setting, I couldn't. So I thought, man, it would be so awesome if I could just have patients and we focus on health and we build a community. So my patients know each other. They're on Zoom together. We do Zoom calls like every week or 2 weeks. We go for walks together and talk about life and what's important. Hey, doc, I have a question for you. They get their doctor. Any question, I'll answer it. I got, 8, 10, 12, 14 people there, and we're exercising, we're making ourselves better, getting a little sun and, sharing life together. And then what happens? They don't need me anymore. They go, we'll just go for a walk without you. So people have made relationships, and, people that were lonely now have friends, and all those things play into our health. And that's what Ben was talking about, going back to that. And my wife, we went for a walk and she was like, Brian, this is what you said a year ago that your dream was. You're living your dream, that. And I go, yeah, I know. And it was emotional for me because I see all these people laughing and talking to each other in front of me. And I was like, this all came because I had the courage just to say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So what I would tell the doctor is like, look around. And if you're a hostage to your job, you got to reassess and, take a loan, do what you got to do. But the caution I would tell people is, look, if you do direct primary care and you practice standard medicine, what's the benefit to the patient, right? If you're rushing and you take a ton of patients and you're doing it for the money, it's like the benefit of my patient. I tell people now, it's like, look, if you don't want to change your lifestyle, you're wasting your money, and really, frankly, you're wasting my time. Because my thing is to get you off medicines. If you're not going to give up donuts every day, I can't get you up in soda and whatever else you're doing. But the people who do, it's like, man, because I go, look, in 3 months you'll be frustrated with me and I'll be frustrated with you because you're paying me, but you're paying me for nothing because you can go to the HMO down the street and they'll give you the same medicine. If you just want to do medicine, you're wasting your time and money. So, I may hurt myself business wise, but it's true. And very few people say, yeah, it's not, I'll just, because people, I'm cheating the system in a way because people seek me out because they've heard me, they like my approach, and they say, look,
Right.
tell me what to do and I'll do it. The problem is we've given bad advice nutritionally. That for years, it's been bad advice. So people are doing it. They say, I have diabetes. What should I do? Exercise more and eat less. Watch your diet. Well, what diet should I do, doctor? We don't, here, take this pamphlet here, be vegan. And people, it doesn't work for me. And their sugars get worse and their A1C gets worse in them. So it's one of those things, like when you see the big picture, you step back and go, man, it's really, no one should get diabetes type 2 without us predicting it at least, I would say, at least 6 months in advance, but we have 10 years of warning, really. So whenever I see people coming in, I feel sad because I'm like, man, this is all preventable. And I think the other thing too, just I'll stop rambling, but I've seen the devastation that comes of it. Everyone I know in the low carb community, doctors, have seen the amputations, the blindness, the neuropathy, the nerve pain, and it's so preventable. And you look at it and think, gosh, I'm trying to fix, like, I'm not going to wait till you blow up your engine. I want to prevent you from blowing your engine. Let's change your oil first, right? Some people may need a major tune-up. We may have to work harder. We may have to be more diligent with people who are on the very verge of diabetes, and other people who are young, healthy, and fit, like the college students here. Okay, let's just keep you on track. You keep working out, watch your stress, get enough sleep, don't take drugs, all those kind of things that we know are beneficial in the long run. That's the upfront investment, right? And so when we do that, we have healthier patients that live longer. Guess what? It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and on that idea of deprescribing and really trying to get people off meds, I hear a lot of doctors say that basically, all this advice is kind of a moot point. This lifestyle advice is a moot point because anyways, people aren't going to take your advice. That sounded more cynical than it deserved, but I don't have a medical practice, so I can't vouch for this firsthand. So what would you estimate? Like you said, there's confirmation selection bias because people are seeking you out, so they're probably more likely to make those changes. But I guess your entire medical career, what's the average? What's your experience in terms of people being willing to make a drastic lifestyle change when you inform them of it?
Yeah, it's really person dependent, because it's like anything. If I tell you, look, yeah, I'm gonna try these drugs, probably not gonna work, but you could try it, and then we'll do this other drug when that doesn't work. Like, it's probably not gonna work, right? So lifestyle, the problem is that doctors don't have time to explain this. That's why I was seriously killing myself in my old practice. I was killing myself because I'm like, look, I'm a doctor and I know I can help you. I'm trying to get you to buy in, and we'll take an hour and a half to buy in. Now I can send a video to my patient, go, look, here's this talk, watch this, come in and we'll talk about it. I don't have to give the same talk over and over again. I like to, because it helps people, but they'll say, well, when you talk about this train thing with the insulin and the fatty liver disease, when they start realizing, like patients, when they feel better and they buy in, I mean, there's no stopping them at that point. It's getting the people who have been told that I think that's it. What I'm getting at is that's a dangerous thought for a doctor to say it doesn't make a difference. Because if it doesn't, if you don't invest, look what Dr. Unwin's doing, right? Dr. Westman, all these guys, Professor Noakes, Jason Fung, Fetke, Gary Fetke, all these people, you look at their lives and what they do. They don't have, I have the state of the art. I do. I have every monitoring. Why? Because I can have a continuous glucose monitor on you, and I can see what your sugars do. And people may not believe me, and they might not know me, but when I say, look, when you eat this, your sugar's going to go up, and then they look and it goes up, then they go, oh my gosh, you were right about the sourdough bread. My friends told me there was no sugar in that. Well, your sugar spiked to 200. That's why your A1C is high. We can fix that. Just don't eat that. If you have to have it less. If there's the best sourdough in the bread, have it sometimes. Like, so my approach is really saying what works for you in the long run. Because if I tell you you can never eat anything except meat and avocados, like at some point you go, this is not very good, right? So I think it's really I've learned a lot. I've changed my view, because I have to look, can people be vegan and be healthy? I think so. It's hard to do, and you really have to be careful, and you have to know what you're doing. Can you be vegetarian and be healthy? Absolutely. If you're eating eggs and getting a good protein source and all that stuff, can you be carnivore and be healthy? Absolutely. Sean Baker proves that, right? So I think when you look at the spectrum, you go, what works for you? Because if you hate red meat, I'm not gonna say, well, you have to. That's the only way to. It's like, I don't like it, doctor. What should I do? Or I'm allergic to eggs. Do I have to eat eggs? No, let's find another protein, right? I have vegans. I have people from India that I'm helping. I have people that are Italian that I'm helping, and we have great cookbooks so you can be culturally sensitive and enjoy it and enjoy life. So it was never, because for me, I've struggled with weight my whole life, and I remember having Melba toast, eating all this stuff I didn't like, and I was miserable. I'm like, this is brutal, man. But not last night, the night before, we had this incredible steak that was just the best I've ever had, honestly. And I was like, this isn't suffering for me. I'm enjoying this. Or having a big salad, or having a Greek salad that's with real olive oil or whatever. I think what we've done is we've made it so difficult, and we've overcomplicated stuff too, right? So having an app like yours where people can understand, okay, here's what I'm eating, here's when I'm feeling better, here's what I was eating then. With a continuous glucose monitor, I can see, that meal, even though it says keto, it's not. Look at your sugars, they spiked to 200. It's false advertising. Trust me, don't have that. Or alcohol, wine. And the benefit for me is I've been overweight my whole life. So now I'm feeling good. My energy is bad. My visceral fat's down. I'm feeling really good, and my mental focus is good, even though I can't multitask still. It's one of those things when people feel better and their knees don't hurt, their mood's better, their anxiety is better. It's so rewarding. And, I think anyone who's listening, if you watch just the magic pill or fat fiction and watch it, these are real people. This is their life getting better. So you go, why should I suffer every day? Why be miserable with arthritis? And you're taking anti-inflammatories because of the inflammation you're eating. So people like you come along and go, look, here's an app that works. Here's something because we have so many tools now. I think the problem is people overcomplicate it. Look, can you just quit drinking soda I have a guy who lost 36 pounds just stopping soda. 36 pounds in 6 weeks. Changed his life just from giving up soda. His joints don't hurt. His mood's better. Everything's better. I'm a genius, and I didn't do anything except say, hey, man, that's not good for you, right? Because his diet was actually pretty healthy otherwise. But he goes, soda doesn't make a difference. It gives you energy. I'm like, dude, try it. Because we looked at all this stuff, and that's all he did was change that, right? He exercised
Wow.
the same, and I was and that's part of it. Is I knew because I was working. I've always worked. I've never been lazy. When they go, oh, you're fat because you're lazy and you eat too much. Well, guess what? Insulin resistance is a huge deal, and there's genetic components to all this. So I'm learning from people and observing. Go, what works for you may not work for me, right? If Sean Baker wanted to eat a bunch more carbs with his muscle mass, where's it going to go? To his muscles. Not going to kill you. But if you have no muscle mass and you don't exercise and you sit around all day and you try to eat like Sean Baker, good luck. Right. And so that's why, a lot of us have different, Tro gets in fights with Lane Norton. I'm like, Tro, he's seeing a different population than you. He's seeing young, healthy guys that are working out 3 hours a day or whatever. Once they stop doing that, they're like the pro football players. They gain on average like 40 or 50 pounds when they stop playing, right? Because they keep doing the same thing they've always done. And now it doesn't work because now they get visceral fat, and it's this whole hormonal change. There's a lot of change that happens as we age, but I'm telling you, we're learning a lot. I think at the next year, we'll learn more about nutrition than we have in the history of medicine.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you say that it's a dangerous proposition for a doctor to assume that lifestyle advice can't work, because of course that depends on the lifestyle advice that you give. Some lifestyle advice not only won't work, but will even make things worse. So it's kind of a be careful what you wish for sort of situation where, yeah, people will, I think, and it's encouraging to hear it because in my experience, I've had very few encounter with my doctors in my life who've encouraged me to take on a new lifestyle activity or something or make a change. But I know that if the doctor is encouraging and presents this as, if not the primary, or at least an equal approach to the pharmacological one, then it changes the game, because it's much easier to convince someone when you feel supported than when the doctor is saying, well, there's this thing you could do, maybe not, and he tells you the last 2 minutes of the appointment. That's totally different. So I think people need to give it a fair shot before they succumb to this cynicism, I think. And I just wanted to jump on the population aspect that you mentioned, where we're not all doctors aren't seeing the same population of patients. And you mentioned you have vegans, so I'm interested. What do you do with them? What are the challenges you encounter? And is there a single one that doesn't supplement something? And are they doing fine, or does everyone supplement a little of something in particular?
Yeah, I honestly have very few vegan patients in my practice, right? But I've seen vegans that I know personally, and I see how they're doing and what they're doing and how they, one guy, he actually works out with Ben Bikikio, who's one of my favorite guys. And I went to work out, and this guy looks like a carnivore. I mean, he's all muscle. He looks great, six-pack abs, well-adjusted, very nice guy. And so I'm looking at him going, and Ben goes, ask him what he eats, because Ben's the more of a carnivore type. I go, what do you eat, man? He goes, I'm vegan. And I go, no, sir. I laugh because I go, I know he can't put on muscle mass like that. So it bugged him. It bugged me, and I was like, "Come on, man, sit down with me." So he takes some protein isolates and some vegan, all vegan, and he's maintaining his muscle mass. So I was like, "Ben, I want to get this guy on a continuous glucose monitor. He's going to be a disaster because he's drinking 40-ounce strawberry smoothies with bananas and all this, and I know it's a disaster. My diabetics eat that, and they're done. I ate that. I was 60 pounds heavier when I was having a green drink every morning, because I was insulin resistant. All I was going is my visceral fat, right? It was like the dumbest thing I could have done. Now I fast. But before, they say if you skip breakfast, you're going to go into starvation mode and your whole body's going to shut down. Really, are we that fragile? No, we're not. Jason Fung has shown that over and over again. So This guy go, let me get a continuous glucose monitor. I get it on him and I start laughing. I go, Ben, this guy's labs are going to be bad because his sugars are up and down, up and down. My patients on keto, low carb, diabetics are like this, flat. Sugar's flat, hormones flat, everything looks good. Their A1Cs, everything. This guy's a disaster, somebody like that amount of sugar he's eating. So I was like, oh, this guy's going to be stunned when I get his labs. I get his labs back, normal LDL, normal triglycerides, normal insulin, normal 3-month sugar. So I'm thinking, how is he doing it? Well, he's all muscle. He has no visceral fat. He has no visceral fat. So all that carbs he's eating is just his body's spiking the insulin, and his muscles are insulin sensitive. He works out 3 hours a day. He has no kids, no wife. He's just a single guy, and it's all going to his muscles. Who cares? Who cares at that point for him right now? Who cares? But when he's my age, it's going to catch up. When he has kids and he can't work out 3 hours a day and he loses a little muscle mass, because what happens, and this is one thing I've learned that I think is the most cutting edge thing I've learned, is that as you increase visceral fat, your muscle mass goes down. As you decrease your muscle mass, your visceral fat goes. I don't know the chicken and the egg, but I know they're so the most dangerous patient is the one with with the beer belly that's hard, right? It's all visceral fat and skinny arms and legs. Because the muscle is what burns the visceral fat. If you have low muscle mass, you can't burn the visceral fat. So I think that's the long-term problem with veganism, is that if you lose muscle mass, or it's a long-term problem with doing I don't want to say the name of it, but a liquid diet where you're on 500 calorie starvation diet. At some point, if you can't get your visceral fat, you lose muscle mass. You lose muscle mass, now you can't get your visceral fat. See what I'm saying? So it's one of those things we start looking, and I'm seeing people with minimal or no weight loss lose inches off their abdomen because they're depleting visceral fat. Guess what? I see their mood get better, their inflammation gets better, their joints are better, their Crohn's disease, all this crazy stuff gets better, and you feel like a snake oil salesman, because I'm like, this is embarrassing, but tell people like how you feel now, right? Because a lot of us who are overweight and obese, we're stress eaters. So guess what? If ketones or changing your diet or decreasing the inflammation in your brain makes you less stressed, you're less likely to stress eat. I don't get stressed and eat anymore. I used to in my old practice all the time. I'd want to grab something because I'm like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. So now I'm chill and I'm zen, and I have little music playing. I have a fountain in the front of my office and all that kind of stuff. It does something to you, and to be able to sit and talk to you at my old practice, to talk to you right now, I would be stressed out because I knew I get 30 calls and I'd be here all night tonight. Right. Today, I don't know, I may get 1 or 2 calls while we're talking, and then I have time to call them, and everyone's happy. So yeah, it's the whole picture. I think that's what we've lost, is looking at is stepping back and going, look. So if you're at home in France, you're having a good time. I mean, the French, you look at some of the food you think they should be fat. This whole, I don't know if you saw this whole thing. I just did a podcast with the croissant diet, Brad Marshall.
Yeah, Brad. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, because we told everyone, stay away from saturated fat, it's going to kill you. Well, does it? Is that because what I'm looking at, what I think ultimately, and I'll just in a nutshell what I'm thinking. I don't have documentation of this yet, but I think anything that decreases your visceral fat increases your longevity, right? However mechanism you want to do that. So, for instance, if I send someone for a liposuction and I suck out all their subcutaneous fat, their mortality doesn't change, and it may even go up in the long term if they're eating too much. Why? As a matter of fact, a great guy that I gave this talk talking about this stuff, and I got reached. I don't know if you, Nick Norwitz, does that name?
Yeah, I had him on the podcast.
So he's brilliant, but he has a condition where he can't put on subcutaneous fat; it all goes visceral. So his labs were a disaster, and his wife was, I mean, his mom was like overweight, and her visceral fat was lower than his, even though he was 137 pounds with 6-pack abs and muscle. So I'm saying you can't just look at someone and go, oh, they're healthy. They may not be healthy. I mean, there's some genetic variants that we all have, and I have a lady yesterday, as a matter of fact, she's 246 pounds, right? We've her diabetes under, everything's great. She has 0.8 liters of visceral fat. Right. So she has a ton of subcutaneous fat. I'm like, she's low risk for heart attack, even though her diabetes under control, all of her stuff, but she stores her fat subcutaneously rather than viscerally. So once she gets her visceral fat down to that level, her body's going to say, oh, I'll just burn this subcutaneous fat, which is like pine. We had to burn down to the oak, right, to get to the pine. So that's why people give up, because you're burning that oak, and it's hard to burn the visceral fat because it's self-preserving. We have data on this. This is scientifically sound. And I have some guys working on this right now, Ben Bickman, Ben Bakikio, because when we start realizing, look, if you can put on muscle mass while you're losing weight, visceral fat, it's like your if you think about the muscle as a torch and your visceral fat is like a snowman, right? If someone comes in and they have a baseball sized snowman, we can melt that very quickly, especially if they have muscle mass. And I know they'll lose more weight. Other people have a ton of visceral fat. So when they lose the visceral fat, believe it or not, they start putting muscle mass on without even working out. But if you work out and do that, if you look at the combination, but we've been tricked to say it's about the calories, right? Calories do matter. And this is where people were giving Jason Fung a hard time, but it matters. If you're eating 10,000 calories a day, you're not going to lose weight. I don't care if you're just eating butter. I don't care what you're eating. It's going to be a problem. It's an energy problem ultimately. But what we find is a ketogenic diet or a low carb diet, especially when combined with like a high intensity interval training or weights to exhaustion, um, people aren't hungry all the time. So it's really it's really about satiety ultimately. It's not about the calories, because we have study after study that shows that. So we kind of make these arguments, but if people aren't hungry, it's just like if you ate something you really liked and you were full, and you leave and you see someone else eating, you go, oh, that looks really good, but I'm not really hungry. I'll have it next time I come. Right? Before it would be people can stop eating. I see real food addiction. I see habits. And so it's trying to figure out that individual patient ultimately and what works for them. Right? So people are shocked. Like when we have Zoom meetings, people are saying, I'm like, how many people are hungry? They're like, I'm never hungry. I just eat because I'm supposed to eat. Like I'll eat once a day or twice a day. You know what I'm talking, because you're metabolically healthy, you can get away. But metabolically sick people are starving all the time, even though they're 400 pounds, because they can't tap into that energy source because the insulin's too high and they don't have enough muscle mass and all these things. So that's why I love what I do. I'm watching people just get healthier and healthier and better and better. Go, okay, you don't need blood pressure medicine. Let's throw that one away. Cancel your prescription for that, and that's fun. I enjoy it. And as far as the deprescribing, Mark Cucuzella, there's so many great people out there that I'm modeling myself after them. So they asked me to write a textbook, a chapter about this stuff. I'm like, talk to the expert. I'm just following what they said, right? I'm just doing what they said and it works. So, and that's part of it, is knowing how it really, I try to do it. I did a talk at Boca Raton last year, and there was hardly anything on deprescribing medication. This is like the Wild West. It's a new frontier. No one's ever deprescribed before because we never could. Now we can. So now we need people that lead the frontier, like cut through the jungle to show us how to do it safely, right?
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. That's
that
a
makes
great
what I
change
do
of
fun.
direction. Yeah, no wonder you're having fun. It's you can't argue with taking someone off medication and them doing better. I think that's a great marker of progress. And I'm actually curious about some of the hard cases you've had. So I don't know if you've had some people go low carb with some initial success, and then really basically everything's pretty much the same for the most part, meaning their diet is the same, they're still sleeping a decent amount, yet they encounter the fat loss plateau, or maybe their sugars start creeping up again, or some inflammatory or painful condition comes back. Do you have some conditions like this at the moment? Have you had them, and what can you tell us about them? Because I love to think about those and try to troubleshoot them in my head. I'm always curious about the hard cases.
Yeah, I think that's for me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk to Brett Scher from Diet Doctor about this, because I have cases after case. You look and go, oh my gosh, this is really cool, because I'm learning. Understand, I've been doing this since July with the amount of information I have now. So I will tell you, in my opinion, I think when we see people plateauing with weight loss, it's physiologic. It's not that they're doing something wrong a majority of the time of what I'm seeing. Why can I say that? Because I have a 24-hour glucose monitor on my patient. I talk to them every week. So so people don't understand, at my old practice, if I step back into my old practice, you're diabetic, you come in, your sugar's out of control. I go, okay, look, watch your carbs, watch your diet. I'll see you in 3 months. 3 months. People have food addiction problems. They have stress in their life. That's their drug of choice, is food and cookies. So if I don't see them for 3 months, they're a total disaster. Now I have patients, I see them every week online. We do this Zoom. Hey, how's it going? I'm seeing your sugars. They look pretty good. Why did it spike yesterday? Oh, I worked out. Okay. That's normal, right? So I can see what's happening. You get stressed, sugars go high. Is stress a killer? Yes. Cortisol response, alcohol response, all these things, I can see it because these people are putting it on there. Like, look, I had a drink at this time. Oh, look, your sugars drop after the drink. You know why that happens? I know why it happens, because I've done all this on myself for the last 3 years, right? I'm not a scientist, but I experiment on myself before I try it on you, because then I've taken the risk on myself and not take it on you, right? So yeah, I think when you start seeing these things, you realize. So my tough cases, I'll tell you the toughest case, and I could tell you for sure, someone who's eaten pretty healthy, right? They have a ton of visceral fat. They're diabetic, ton of visceral fat. Like as an example, just common sense wise. And I could tell you my story, right? My wife, you can see her behind me. She's thin. She has, if she works out for a week, she has 6-pack abs, right? She doesn't gain a lot of weight, but she gains it in her butt and hips. Don't tell her I said that, but she does. So during the holidays, we would drink and eat and do our thing back in the day before I was low carb. And I would gain weight. She would gain weight. And, we go January 1st. That's it. We're going on a diet. We're going to have heart healthy whole wheat. And we're going to have the, tuna sandwich. And we're going to eat Melba toast and all this stuff. Fruit smoothie, all this stuff, like eat 6 times a day, small meals, all this stuff. My sugar, I'm not losing any weight. I'm working out. She doesn't even hardly work out. And she's losing weight. We go places and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you look great. Like they see it on her. They don't see it on me. I'm like, how can it be that I'm doing that? I'm twice as big as her. I should be losing more weight and I'm not. And it always bothered me. But now in my practice, I would look at it and I go, okay, I have a guy, he comes in, 13.3 liters of visceral fat, type 2 diabetes out of control. His wife's about 168 pounds, good muscle mass. She used to be a volleyball player, that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to do keto, low carb. Here's the meal plan. Here's what we're doing. I explained it all to them. I have him on a 24-hour glucose. I've got him wired in. I know I'm going to crush it. I'm like, I'm celebrating already because this is going to be easy, right? I know it's going to be easy because I know he's not eating great and all this stuff. First week, they come back. Hey, guys, how's it going? I'm looking at the weight. I'm like, is this right? He lost 0.8 pounds. She loses 6.8 pounds or 4.2 pounds, something ridiculous. I'm like, wow. And she goes, yeah, I'm not even as strict as he is. He's really strict. I've been watching him. He's not doing anything wrong. He had a few drinks every now and again, but nothing major, right? Next week, the same thing. Next week, the same. 0.8 pounds on his side. She loses 4 pounds. I'm like, dude, she's just melting fat. Well, when I looked at her visceral fat, she started at 1.8 liters. He started at 13.3 liters. So I'm like, has to be something with the visceral fat being a problem. So I started thinking about it. It started bothering me because I make observations and I'm not a scientist. So I'm like, okay, how does this possibly make sense? He has more muscle mass than her, more fat to lose. He should be dropping weight. He should have dropped his insulin like crazy and he should be doing great. But he was having a glass of wine here and there, just different stuff like that. So, he was a really great case because I had to figure out it's the visceral fat is either more energy dense or it's harder to get to, right? Because she's burning subcutaneous fat already. I can see her pants are, and he's losing inches off his waist, but he's not losing weight. I'm like, this is weird. So I'm like, I start researching. Sean O'Meara had done stuff with MRI scans, looking at that. And I'm like, hey, Sean, let's talk about your MRI scans. They're losing visceral fat, but they're putting on muscle mass at the same time. That would make sense of what I'm seeing because this guy's waist is coming down, but he's not losing weight. So people like that give up. They give up, but I'm like, look, your everything's getting better. And in his case was an interesting one because I had just done the interview with Brad Marshall with the talking about stearic acid, linoleic acid. So I go, let's do bulletproof coffee and see what happens in the morning. I'm going to see what happens to your sugars. His sugars were in 260, 270. And I'm like, I don't like that at all. But I had just taken him off glipizide and a couple other meds. So I'm like, it should be improving. I don't know why. So I was like, it's been like 2.5 weeks. I go, can you do you think you could suck it up and just fast for 24 to 36 hours, see what happens? Yeah, I'll do it, doc. Whatever you want to do. I'm here. I want a 36-hour fast. What happens? Sugar's 70 to 80 like this. From 260 to 70 to 80. I'm like, uh-oh. Jason Fung's right. It's an energy problem. He had too much energy. He couldn't store it. If you eat a bunch of fat, it's filling up your fat stores. Your fat stores are full and you're putting more fat in there. Your sugar has nowhere to go. Right? Your liver's kicking out sugar all the time. So I was like, maybe that's his problem. So this guy, seriously, he's crushed it. And he's lost tons, like all of his shirts are falling off him, all this stuff. But it took the weight was not the marker to look at. And I realized that. So I started researching. I'm like, how can it be? Because I'm like, why would it be from a survival? Like everything our body does is survival. Like we screw it up. If we get out of the way, it'll survive. So I was like, what is the advantage? Like, why would visceral fat hold on to itself? Like if you have 13 liters of visceral fat, you don't need to hold on to it. But what happens is as you get more visceral fat, it blocks you from burning it. It becomes more resistant to getting to it. So I started researching because visceral fat's been my problem. So I said, okay, how do I burn visceral fat in particular? It doesn't really matter. Really, when I looked at the literature, what happens is no matter how you lose weight, you lose visceral fat first. If you have a lot of visceral fat, you lose that first. If you don't have a lot of visceral fat, you may have a set point. I don't know what that is, but then you switch over to subcutaneous. So anyways, this guy, I'm like, why would it be? It doesn't make sense. I go, what would ever be an advantage of being fat and not having muscle mass? Why would fat inhibit muscle mass? And I was thinking, I go, what about bears? Bears get fat. They get a lot of visceral fat and then their muscle goes to zero. Why? Because if they're going to hibernate for 6 months, you don't want to have a lot of muscle mass because that's going to burn through your visceral fat. You want to be as fat as you can and have as little muscle. So those of us with more visceral fat were more resistant to dying of starvation. Really, right?
Right. So the more visceral fat you accumulated, the harder it would be to lose it. So it's sort of if you're gaining it, it's for a reason. So you don't want to lose it easily. Is that sort of the idea?
Exactly. Because
Gotcha.
yeah, and I had to look at it, I go, okay, why would visceral fat hold on to itself? Why do I see what I'm seeing? Why is it that a boxer, Sugar Ray Leonard, he would go down to really like 150 pounds. Then he's 160 pounds. Then he's 170. He can't get back down there anymore, even though he's working out like crazy, because his visceral fat doesn't want to let go anymore. Because it's like, you starved me for all that time. I'm not falling for that again. I'm going to keep money in the bank. I'm not spending it all right now, right? So it becomes very hard to get that energy loose. So even though they have six-pack abs, they're not able to get that visceral fat down. It looks like I'm speculating on this. So I go, okay, so if I'm the bear, I'm not eating for 6 months and I'm sleeping. So what happens? They decrease their visceral fat and their muscle mass actually goes up when they're hibernating. They get out and they're not weak and they can't walk because they digested all their muscle. But, and so I saw this. And so one of my patients actually works, she was in Colorado. She works at a lions, tigers, and bears place, like a refuge for these animals. And I said, and I was telling her this story. And she goes, oh my gosh, it's funny you say that. She said, do you know how we get the bears fat in captivity? I said, no. She goes, Walmart donates all the junk food, donuts, bagels, chips, crackers, and they eat that and they get fat.
Amazing.
And she goes, I always got mad at them because they would just go to sleep and sleep it off and they come back skinny. I'm like, why can't I do that? And I was like, yeah, you're right. But then I said, well, what about the lions and tigers? What do you guys feed them? And she goes, oh, you give them donuts, they turn their head. They're not going to eat that. They don't eat that. They won't, if they're starving, they won't eat that food. What do they eat?
Yeah.
Meat and eggs. Sean Baker, right? Sean Baker's a carnivore.
Basically.
That's what he looks like. And he looks like Sean Baker has no visceral fat. So is he at increased risk of cardiovascular disease? I don't know. But I think if I'm right, that visceral fat's the problem, the inflammation, prothrombotic. And here's the crazy part. Is subcutaneous fat gives off anti-inflammatory, right? It's protective. So someone like Nick, he can't protect against the visceral fat. You gain visceral fat and you have no subcutaneous fat, you're in trouble. So you do liposuction and you don't have any, right? You don't have a counterbalance for that subcutaneous or that visceral fat. So you could be in major trouble even though you look good. That's what we see clinically. I've seen that. I've seen people have heart attacks at 140, and I've seen people I had 11 people in my old practice that were like 160 pounds that had type 2 diabetes. I'm like, how can that be? Because they're skinny, because fat people get diabetes. No, it's not true. Skinny people get, especially if Indian and Asian descent. So when you start looking at it, you go, oh, so we could say someone was healthy. I can't say anyone's healthy until I say their insulin level. If you look at Nick, 6-pack abs, all muscle, and he has more visceral fat than someone who's overweight, right? And
that's
it's ridiculous.
Super interesting.
It's very interesting. So I'm talking to Ben Bickman. I go, look, elucidate why this is happening, and it could be genetic partially. Like some of us just have to be, alcohol will have to be more careful. So yeah, in Nick's case, calories matter, right? Because he's going to store visceral fat if he's putting too much energy. No matter what that energy, if he's eating 300 pounds of broccoli a day, he's going to have visceral fat, right? I mean, obviously it would be impossible to do that, but I'm just saying. It's an energy model. So you go, okay, so how do I live a long, healthy life? I want to decrease my inflammation. I want to decrease thrombosis, all those things. So what I'm getting at is, look, everyone wants to get rid of the love handles, but you can't get to the love handles till you get rid of visceral fat. When they say, oh, you're doing spot burning, I don't think that's true. Maybe some exercise person will prove me wrong, but I don't think that's true. I think your body's going to go, look, why would I get rid of this stuff that's not going to hurt you, that's protective first, before I get rid of the stuff that's hurting you, right? And then you go, well, what's the survival benefit? Well, because we've always died of starvation. So you want to hold on to that. That's like the last bank account. Like you don't want to give that up. And I think that's what we do. And most of us, by the time they get to me and me in my life, have done that. So for me, going back, overweight as a kid, get into high school, meet my future wife, work out, playing football, wrestling, played football at 100 or 205 pounds, wrestling 160 pounds. So I'd have to lose 40 pounds between football and wrestling, right? So I wasn't eating cookies and donuts, and I was trying to bulk up for football, and then I had to lose. So ever since I started gaining weight, and I go, oh, I must have screwed up my metabolism. I probably did. That's the biggest loser diet that I was on, right? When I was in wrestling season, I was starving myself and eating nothing. I was like, but you're eating like 200 calories or 500 calories, whatever it is. And so you start realizing, yeah, that's a problem. So the other hard case was another guy. He came to me, he lost 44 pounds doing a liquid diet before he came to me. And I go, why are you coming to me, man? You're doing well. And he goes, because I can't stand. I'm fighting with my wife. I'm starving all the time. I can't concentrate at work. He literally was miserable. I go, okay, look, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to be frustrated because you're not going to lose weight right away, because you're going from 400 calories or 500 calories a day to 2,000 calories a day. It's the calories aren't going to be right for you. And you're probably going to gain some weight initially, but trust me, because his insulin was high. He still had visceral fat, all that stuff. And I could see it. Most of his weight loss was muscle mass. I put this guy on a Ben Bikikio type workout, ketogenic diet, and in 4 months, he lost a total of 0 pounds. 0 pounds, didn't lose a pound. And he was frustrated, and I was frustrated. We're trying to, fasting, do it, trying everything. But then I realized, look, he's losing he lost 10 inches off his waist. He's down like tons of shirt sizes. His pants are falling off him without weight loss. Why? Because he's putting muscle mass on. He's losing visceral fat, putting on muscle. Now, after 4 months, the guy's losing. I just talked to him 2 days ago. He lost 4 pounds, 3 pounds, 2 pounds. Now he's burning subcutaneous fat. He switched over. He got to a point where now the oak is done. He's going to hold on to some of it, but now he's switching up. This is my theory, but I can't imagine any way that this isn't what I'm seeing, because I'm seeing it in multiple people with more visceral fat. If someone comes to me now, like that lady yesterday, I go, because she's lost weight. She's got her fatty liver disease under control. She's off her insulin. Everything's looking good, but her visceral fat, I could not believe it was 0.8. I'm like, I don't believe that's true. I mean, she's still 246 pounds with 0.8 liters of visceral fat. Maybe she can't put on that much visceral fat, right? Maybe that's her genetic. I don't know. She's an interesting one for me, because she should be crushing it now with weight loss, right? Her dad, on the other hand, he hasn't lost that much visceral fat, but he's lost a ton of weight, and he was out of control diabetes. So I'm thinking, oh, he was at the visceral fat where he could tolerate, his body wasn't really attacking that visceral fat. It hasn't changed, but he's lost tons of weight, normalized all of his stuff, and he looks really great. And she's mad because like he's losing way more weight. But when he came to me, he had the worst diet in the world. She was already doing low carb and keto and all this stuff, so she probably was losing visceral fat before that, but she wasn't seeing it on the scale. So what I'm getting at is, look, the scale is probably the worst marker. You look at a brilliant person like Dr. Westman. You know what he does to measure visceral fat? I didn't know this. I never knew this. Look at Unwin. What these guys are doing without the technology at, I'm like, if I fail, I've got serious issues, man, because I got everything at my fingertips. I can see if you're cheating. I can see if you're working out. I can see if you're stressed. I could do it all. These guys just had clinical intuition. What does Westman do? Gets a string and puts it around their waist and he goes, tie it, cut it here, put it on the wall. Next month, do it again. And you see it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So
I love that.
They don't need a fancy machine. Like I spent all this money on this fancy machine, and it's probably a gimmick, but it helps me. I want to do the best I could because I know now visceral fat's the problem. We have to attack that, right?
That's super interesting. And I have a question about, well, it's kind of a comment, and I'm interested to know what you think about it, because I think visceral fat has a very strong like immunological inflammatory component. And I thought about that when you brought up Nick, because Nick has ulcerative colitis, which I do too. Actually, he had a more severe version, unfortunately. But I was thinking that maybe it's this inflammatory balance that's predisposing energy to being partitioned towards visceral fat, whilst in others, it's being partitioned towards the subcutaneous fat. And whether you drink bulletproof coffee or not, in terms of the calorie, that's not going to change necessarily where the energy goes. Now, there's maybe something else when you drink bulletproof coffee that's changing that balance. And I don't know what it is, to be honest, but it seems to be the case that when you lose visceral fat, you tend to have lower markers of inflammation. And of course, putting on muscle also tends to lower your markers of inflammation. So you've got this really interesting sort of triangulation of different factors all pointing in the same direction, where if you can normalize visceral fat, you normalize inflammation. A good way to normalize inflammation is to put on muscle mass. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the holy grail. That's why I think we're on top of sitting there going, oh my gosh, it's like we have an X on the ground. There's oil under us, but we have to dig to get to the oil. That's exactly right. Because Ben Bikikio, the exercise guy, goes, Brian, what's the number one marker for longevity? I'm like, what? Cholesterol, sugars, whatever. He goes, muscle mass. I go, what's muscle mass? You're carrying extra heavy stuff around. What does that do? Well, now you understand. Now it makes sense. Because if Ben Bikikio is telling me it's muscle mass and Ben Bickman is telling me it's decreased visceral fat, can those be
right? Are they
buddies,
can they be reconciled?
Yeah, they can be reconciled. I can definitely reconcile it now, because the more muscle mass you have, the less visceral fat you're going to have, right? Because if you have a lot of visceral fat, it's hard to put on muscle mass. If you have a lot of muscle mass, it's harder to put on visceral fat. So when people can't gain weight, they have no visceral fat and they have muscle mass, but it's hard to, depending on diet. So those people, maybe they go on a higher approach. That's what I'm saying is, like, when you look at the picture, you go, okay, I think we have enough data on visceral fat inhibiting muscle mass. So if I can put on muscle mass and decrease your visceral fat, so get this, you'll like this study I saw. And when I saw this, I sat there and went, you got to be kidding me. It's ridiculous, right? So what they did is they took people and they had them that were trying to lose weight, and they put them on these two groups. 12 weeks of exercise cycle, which I don't even recommend necessarily, but if that's all you can do, cool. I do like interval training, and I like Ben's workout. And so anyways, 12 weeks. One group, they gave them an interleukin-6 blocker, right? The other group, exercise. People with interleukin-6 blocker, their LDL cholesterol went through the roof, and they gained visceral. They didn't lose any visceral fat. They didn't lose weight. But if it's calories, then they're eating the same thing,
Right.
and they're exercising the same amount, they should lose. Why? So that makes sense of why my wife would lose weight and I don't. It makes sense because if my visceral fat is not sensitive to interleukin-6. So when I looked at that, I go, okay, look, what I know clinically is exercise helps with weight loss, and I know that fasting works with weight loss. So I'm thinking, when I saw that study, I go, okay, so if that's true, if I'm working out hard, like Ben's workout to exhaustion, and I kick out a bunch of interleukin-6, now he has other stuff, interleukin-6, interleukin-10, interleukin-15, goes to visceral fat, breaks it down. Why? To give energy into the system so I can use it in my muscle. So it's shifting that energy from visceral fat to muscle, right? You're burning that visceral fat with muscle. So I go, okay, if that's true, of course, the first question my patients ask is like, why can't I just take something to like an interleukin-6 to release? Interleukin-6 are pro-inflammatory, plus, which is counterintuitive. That's why I need guys like you to figure this out. But in pulses, it's different, right? And coming from the muscle is different than overstuffed fat cells. So I'm thinking, so people ask me, well, doctor, why don't you just come up with a pill that increases interleukin-6? Well, great. If I increase interleukin-6, what do? I break down your fat, put it in the bloodstream. You're not exercising. What does it do? It goes back to the fat stores. So when I work out, for instance, when I'm fasting and I work out, my sugars go crazy. Like if I do kickboxing, for instance, it will go from 90 to 148 when I'm done. Why? Because my body is interleukin-6 is breaking down, kicking out. It probably has some effect on liver glycogen release, fat release, and so my sugars would spike. But if I ate before I went, it didn't spike to that level, even though I had energy in this, because it's burning that energy, not releasing it, right? It's not releasing glycogen stores and all that. So yeah, it's really liver glycogen I'm talking about, not muscle glycogen, but liver glycogen. It's shifting it over to the muscle. So Ben's type workout, I don't spike my sugar at all, right? Because no matter how much my liver kicks out, my muscles take it up. They get very insulin sensitive because it's these type 2B muscle fibers that are very, very sensitive to insulin. Right. Or may not even need insulin. That some of the studies are showing. So yeah, there's receptors for sugar that just drags it in because you have to survive, right? If you're working out, you got to be. So yeah, that's what I mean. And so you start looking at it, it's like, okay, if that's true, if interleukin-6 is making me liberate my fat, have lipolysis, then fasting should do the same thing. Nope, works by a different mechanism. Fasting works by a different. So fasting and that, I'm hitting my visceral fat by two different mechanisms. So that should have more bang for my buck, because I have some patients who hate to exercise, but they'll fast. Other people hate to fast, but they exercise. So if you say, well, just do the other thing, exercise twice a week for 15 minutes to see what happens. You release that interleukin-6, it's going to help you, and you're going to have results, and I'm going to look smarter, and you're going to be better, right? Metabolically healthier. So I think it's that is when people understand that, when they get that concept, they go, okay, I'll exercise because I don't want to. If I'm not eating the cookies I like, then then I'll exercise, right? Because the opposite is true. People go, why exercise today? They're obese and they're drinking Gatorade while they're running on the treadmill. So you're emptying your sugar and filling it back up. That makes no sense. It makes zero sense, right?
Yeah.
And also you look and go, well, I worked out today, so that's what I did. I'll have an extra whatever dessert tonight because I worked out today. Doesn't work that way because you have visceral fat still is going there. So if you're trying to get rid of, and I'll tell you this, you'll like this one too, because these are all things that I've changed my views on because I experienced. So I had another difficult case, type 2 diabetic, postmenopausal, stressed out. That's the worst case, the most difficult, worried about weight, always check your weight. She works out. She's stressed all day long. When I'm on a call like this, she'll be looking at her phone, texting while we're talking. I'm like, hey, just chill for a second, right? Like take a breath. But her stress hormones are high, cortisol is high, everything's screwed up. She's not losing weight. She's mad at me on my birthday, December 22nd, which is the day I was taking 10 days off. She comes in and she's mad. And I go, look, I'm looking at your diet. You're doing appropriate exercise. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. You should be losing weight. There's something wrong. Either we have to try fasting. She goes, I'm not fasting. I'm like, okay. Then I said, how much alcohol do you drink? And she goes, oh, my husband's a wine broker. So 2 or 3 glasses a night. I'm like, that's your problem. That's it. Yeah. We've nailed it. That's the problem. She goes, that's not the problem. She was annoyed with me. That's not the problem. I don't even enjoy wine, but I drink it with them. I'm like, I think that's your problem. Because alcohol will cause fatty liver disease. But she's like, well, I count that into my macros. I count it into my sugar intake, right? I'm still low carb. Like you could be low carb, but if you're drinking alcohol every night, it's a trouble. So guess what? Me being the smart guy, I'm in keto for all these years or 3 years now. Working out regularly. So I'm like, I'm off for 10 days for the first time in 17 years, by the way. That's my other commercial for it. My wife's like, you're taking a whole week off? just to hang out? I'm like, yeah, we're on vacation. So what do? We had wine every night, 2 glasses most night, 3 a couple nights because it was good wine. And I weighed myself on my first day back here. I gained 7.8 pounds in less than 10 days, right? Drinking wine. So I was like, uh-oh, that's a problem. So what I do, I fast for 2 days. Fast for 2 days, I lose 7.2 pounds.
Oh.
Did I lose 7.2 pounds of fat and gain it? No, it was insulin going up. I was getting insulin resistant in my liver. I was getting fatty liver. My insulin was going up, holding on to salt, right? I peed like crazy when I was fasting because I was lowering my insulin back down, getting rid of the salt. And so I'm happy because I'm going to tell this lady I'm right. I wasn't happy that I gained weight, but I was happy that I was right because I know for a fact that that's a problem. Because I don't drink that. I don't drink consistently like that usually.
Right.
So I went in to tell her, and I go, hey, guess what? She goes, okay, I know, you're right. I said, how do you know? I didn't even tell her what happened. She goes, I lost 4.8 pounds over Christmas and New Year's for the first time in my life, right? And her sugars got better.
Oh, wow.
Why?
Over that period.
Over that period of time, 4.8 pounds after hardly any weight loss. And I go, over Christmas. And she goes, I cheated a little bit too. And I go, well, how'd you lose weight? I quit drinking. You told me to. I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, I quit drinking, lost 4.8 pounds. I go, oh, that's true because I gained 7.8, so I know I'm right, and you've proved it, right? So those kind of things you look and you're like, why? You have to look at the variables and say, why is this not working? It should work. But yeah, I haven't had anyone other than, I have one lady, she was stagnant and she's an ICU nurse, and I know she listens to the podcast, so she'll probably find me here. But it's funny because I tease her because I was noticing, I go, when you're at work, you don't check your sugars at all. Why not? And she starts laughing. She's like, well, there's a cookie thing there. And I hate to, I don't need to see that I'm eating candy. I go, it doesn't matter if I see it. It's like, like the other day I went for a run and I didn't have my watch. And I was like, oh man, I don't have my watch. I'm not gonna be able to track my steps. I'm like, well, the steps still help you. So just don't worry about it. Like, it's so funny how we think now, right? Because I want to document and go, okay, there's how much I worked out. You still get the FX, trust me, even if you don't get the points. So anyways, it's like, hey, you're hurting yourself. Now she's wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and I have 4 patients of mine now that are in that same ICU. So they keep an eye on each other. They go, hey, instead of eating that, why don't we do this? They're making change. They're all killing it. And I look like a genius, right? Because it's making those little changes, because you don't realize every time you go by and break off half a donut or a cookie or whatever, it adds up. It's Walmart. At the end of the day, you're spending $300 rather than, so it's going to be the carb creep. The other thing, like just as a quick note that I learned, this couple, he's really big and a lot of visceral fat. Get him on board. I'm watching him every week. He knows I'm watching him. He's starting to exercise. He's starting to do the right stuff. He's losing weight. I think he lost 59 pounds. And then between we finished our 12-week program, 59 pounds down. Thanksgiving, takes off a CGM. He goes through a metabolic health maintenance program. So I don't see him for a month. So I see him and I have this all documented. I go, oh my gosh, dude. Well, you didn't lose a lot of weight, but you lost 2 pounds. He's like, well, started laughing. Him and his wife started laughing. They're Filipino. And they go, we knew we weren't seeing you every week. So we said, screw it. We're going to have fun. So for 12 days, they just ate terrible foods. Then they realized, we're going to have to go back. So they went to a nutritionist who I recommend, a sports nutrition guy and exercise guy. So he gained 12 pounds. She gained 9 pounds. He gained 12 pounds in that short of time. And saw him, and he goes, oh my gosh. So by the time they saw me, they came back down. He had lost 2 pounds. So he lost 14 pounds from the time he got in with the sports nutritionist, and she lost 11 pounds. So she lost they both lost a total of 2 pounds. But I didn't see the trajectory in the middle. Had I been seeing him every week, we would have caught that and said, oh, you're off the rails. What's happening? Why is your continuous glucose monitor off? So for some people, that CGM is the best tool because it's accountability. And plus, it's not my opinion anymore. I had that lady that ate sourdough bread and her sugar spiked, and then she had some corn and it went up. Like, it's not my opinion. They go, corn's healthy. My friend said it's healthy. Eat it and see what happens. Right? Drink that glass of wine and see what happens. Yeah. And so when you start seeing that stuff, you get clinical. Now I know for the next patient. So I'm learning from every patient I have. I'm observing, and I may not know why it's working, but I know what's happening, if that makes sense. So biochemically, I don't know, but I know that when people's visceral fat's really high, they're going to be hard to lose weight. If they have no muscle mass and high visceral fat, that's going to be the toughest case, especially a postmenopausal female. Plus, people who are worried about their weight stress me out. Like yesterday, I have an ICU nurse, surgical nurse, and we were talking about this stuff. She goes, oh my gosh, it's so weird you say this, because we have skinny people, we see it, and then they go in to do a appendectomy or something, and they have so much fat on the inside. I go, yeah, that's a tophi. That's what you're seeing. And like, she didn't know what she was seeing. She was like, so they would say, it's so weird. How can they have some, because they could have nicks that don't watch their diet and they look great. And you go, oh my gosh, this is weird. And she goes, sometimes we see morbidly obese people and they have hardly any fat in there. And we go, yeah, that's exactly what I'm seeing. It's genetic to some degree, I think, where you're going to partition that energy. So anyways, I talked to her and I was like so happy because, you know, we talked about some of the stuff she could really change. And her first thing is like, look, and this is this are like golden, I don't know what the word is, like flashing lights and sirens of happiness, right? Because I go, look, what are your goals? Why are you working? Why'd you seek me out? She's in Northern California, about 6 hours from me. And I go, why'd you seek me out? And she said, I want to be metabolically healthier. I want to be healthier and I want to feel good. I go, what about the weight? She goes, I don't really care about that, but I really, I'm like, oh, ding, 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 ding. This is perfect. Because if you care about your weight and you weigh yourself, I'm telling you, that is the biggest correlation I've seen. And I've talked to world experts, you know, Dr. Unwin, people who are focused on the weight, they get burned out. And that's why I'm saying this visceral fat, subcutaneous fat is so big, because if I tell you, look, your insulin's getting better, your 3 month sugar, like one of my patients, she lost her, like I think I might've mentioned 9.8 to 6.2, 3 dress sizes down, 4 pounds of weight loss. I'm like, are you kidding me? If you get and I showed her, I go, here's a graph. You dropped your cardiac mortality from going from 9.8 to 6.2. You dropped your cardiac mortality by 400% probably. Like at least I couldn't tell because she's off the graph, you know, of this stuff I use. So yeah, and you start looking at it and go, okay, so what matters? If you lose a bunch of weight and you die of a heart attack, what good is it? Right. So all these assumptions that people made were wrong. It's like, look, if I can decrease your visceral fat, I think this is ultimately what's going to happen. We're going to have data, and then life insurance is going to say, we don't care about the BMI. I don't care about the BMI. It doesn't mean anything. What's Sean Baker's BMI, right? Body mass index is the, you know, height to weight. His weight, he has so much muscle mass, it's going to be huge. But his waist is, you know, whatever. I don't even know what his waist is, but it's you know, he's a machine with 6 packs on top of it, with no visceral fat. So is he at increased risk over someone who's, you know, doesn't work out at all and is all fat and has no muscle? No, of course not.
Right.
So the
Seems
BMI is
unlikely.
wrong.
Yeah.
It's
it's
unlikely. All the data for 60 years has said that. I look back at, I'm like, we've known this for 60 years, but no one talks about it's really, I would look at like, why do they care about the belly circumference? Well, because if you measure the thigh fat, it doesn't mean anything. It's subcutaneous. That's not visceral fat. That's subcutaneous fat. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
From a
When you
cardiovascular
start
standpoint.
thinking of fat more as an organ that has a particular function, and depending on where in the body it's deposited, it has a different effect, then you can start to appreciate all that. But we've been hit over the head with this idea that fat is something you want to literally suck off your body, or you want to burn away, as if it was some sort of toxic mold on you. And in fact, it has this very important role. So that's it's really, really interesting clinical discussion. And I hope we'll talk about it some more in the future, because I'm doing some work with a clinic at the moment. And I think for us to find a way to assess visceral fat, of course, there's the tape measure, which is useful. I'll definitely talk to you more about the other gadgets.
Measure a
to
string, man. Like string.
Yeah.
I'm like telling people, just put a string around. Like if I have remote people, I go, put a string around your waist. Well, should I get a DEXA? Put a string around your waist. This is good because you're going to lose visceral fat first. That's what we're doing. That's what we're seeing. Now, it can be confusing because some people lose weight and their belly will sag down, and then it gets actually bigger with weight loss. But it's subcutaneous fat, not visceral fat. So yeah, so the machine would be more helpful in that setting for sure, more accurate. But anyways, I think we're learning, and I'm still in the infancy. Some of this stuff, they may in a year go, nah, he's wrong. Possibly. But I think I'm going to have the best scientists that I know look at it and go, look, let's look at my clinical experience. Let's look and see what you guys could do mechanistically, because most of the stuff I never heard of. Oh, and this thing called TRPBR2. Nick did a great little YouTube thing on it. What's TRPBR2? Comes from visceral fat. Was it increased cytokine storm, which kills COVID patients? We know that correlation. We know it's high visceral fat, high insulin, you know, diabetes, low vitamin D. They're the same creature. They all go together. Yeah. You don't see people with normal vitamin D's with tons of visceral fat and insulin through the roof and all that stuff. It just, you'd have to supplement a lot for that not to be. So you go, okay, which one's the marker and which one's real? What really matters? But inflammation, I think, is going to be the big problem. Like you're saying, like if you have a lot of visceral fat, your Crohn's disease is probably going to be worse. If you're eating a terrible diet, it could be inflammation from the food itself, from the visceral fat gives off. We look at CRP and we go, oh, if your CRP is a high, you're increased risk. Well, what makes CRP go up? Increased visceral fat, right? It does. Or infection or other problems. So people have heart attacks a lot of times when they're sick. So people like with COVID, whatever, you have a big inflammatory storm, guess what? You're more likely to have heart attack, strokes, and all this stuff. And that's what we're seeing clinically. That's what's happening. So you go, how do I decrease my risk of dying of this? Short term is COVID, long term diabetes, cancer, all this stuff. We have data on this, and that's why it's exciting to say, okay, what is the healthiest diet? If I go back, I used to say probably vegan diet is the healthiest diet. Now I'm looking at it going, is it? If you lose muscle mass, you look at the vegan leaders, right? I'm not being mean. I'm just saying, look at them, put them next to Sean
Yeah.
Baker, put
It's
them
a
next to
matter
Ted
of fact
Naiman, right?
observation.
It's a matter of fact. You look and you go, these guys don't look healthy. You look at them, none of them go, that's a picture of health. You don't look at any of them and go, wow, that guy, Gregor, does he look healthy? Does he look like a guy you go, yeah, that's what I want to do, right? So I think of those things, but there's this mindset that, like protein's bad for you, fat's bad for you. Well, is it if you're eating avocado and olives? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think the data supports any of that. So what we have to do is look at clinical observations. We look at studies, and if if I look at Sean Baker's coronary calcium score of 0, do I tell him don't eat steak anymore? You're going to kill yourself. I don't think I can say that. I could say that before because I'm like, let's see his numbers. When he gets his numbers back, I'll tell you. But his numbers are very intriguing from a physiologic standpoint. It took me a while to figure out what's going on, but I think I know now why his numbers are a little off. He works out like a beast, and that's going to spike your sugars and do different things, So yeah, these numbers you have to look at it in context of what you're seeing. You have to look at the person and the numbers, what they're eating, what their stress levels like, if they're sleeping, if they hate their job, if they're, have faith, if they, collect rocks, or if they find their place of peace, and I think that's important for all of us to say, where do I find my peace? What do I enjoy? What's my calling? So if I work a few hours doing this, you can see I'm not being tortured in the salt mines all day, right?
Yeah, you don't look sad at all. It's beautiful to see. And talking about finding your peace, this is something I actually wanted to talk to you about, and maybe we can sort of fit it in with this question about science communication on Twitter and how docs should comport themselves in the public sphere, what they should be saying, how much they should be saying, how that sort of stuff. And I guess it's a bit of a two-part question, and just want to have your ideas about this, because you're someone who's always very grateful for the good things in your life, and you're always talking about them, and it's really quite infectious. It's you want to be around people like that. Like, that's an attractive quality in people, that who can see the good in things and who are grateful, and who don't, just exude this negativity and this cynicism, but quite the opposite. And first of all, I wanted to ask you, where does that come from? Is this is how you were born? Was this your personality? Did you have to work at it? Is your interior very different from your exterior? I'm actually curious about that, because it's difficult for me personally to always match my internal state with what I want, what I'm trying to project, what I want people to see. So it's not easy, and I guess that jumps us into the question of public communication. So I've thrown a lot at you, but I wanted to end on this because I think you were the right guy to ask about all that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you noticing that. That's important to me. It's like, Zuby, I interviewed him for my podcast, and he's a rapper, really brilliant guy, and he goes,
oh
look,
yeah, he's great. I know him. I watch his YouTube channel.
Yeah, and he just says it how he sees it. Go, look, I don't want to offend people. I'm just going to call. He goes, I'm ruthless against ideas, right? And merciful to people, meaning I don't want to pick on people individually. I don't like ideas. So there's people I see that for me, look, I'm a Christian, right? That's my, I wasn't always a Christian. I was 25 and my life was kind of going in a sideways a little bit. And like all these crazy things happened, people came into my life, and I started having a different perspective on life, right? My wife's a strong Christian. She had a huge influence on my life. And for me, it's like, look, I don't want to preach at people. I don't want to say, look, the Bible's the only way. And I have my best friend in the world's Muslim. I have Jewish friends. I have friends of all faiths. I love people. I don't care what you believe, really. It's like, hey, find your peace. So I said something about hope and faith on I'm not trying to convert someone on Twitter, but I'm saying, hey, look, guys, keep the hope, keep the faith, because what I see as a doctor is people dying of lack of hope. Suicide is the lack of hope. That's hell to me. When you have no hope, like, I go bike riding on Saturday mornings with one of my good friends, and it's always a joy. And every time I go over that bridge, I go, oh my gosh, I feel the weight of the world off my shoulders. And I just I'm going to have a great time. And it's my place. But then I realized, like, how many people have given up all hope and they jumped off that mid span of that bridge, right? It's very common. So you're like, wow, they just gave up all hope. They have no hope. So when people take away hope, I take that personal. I go, why would you take someone's hope? Because I get attacked for faith, and I go, look, if that works for me, even if it's hocus pocus and it's all dumb, let me have my hope. If you think that holding a rock in your pocket makes you live better, cool. I'm not going to tell you it's stupid. It doesn't work. If it works for you, cool. It's good with me, right? So I think a lot of us are so, and as a Christian, we're known for being judgmental. I'm like, man, we're down in like fifth place now because I get judged all the time because I say what I believe. So when I said what I believed, I lost 800 followers in one day, right? And that's why I do a different
Really?
podcast called Life's Best Medicine. I guess people don't want to hear it. They go talk keto, talk low carb. I don't want to hear it, but that's part of me. If I came out as something else, they would say, oh, we support you, Brian. That's cool. But if I come out and say, look, here's what I believe. I don't think everyone has to do what I do, but it works for me. And if my life's a train wreck, then don't follow what I'm saying. Don't follow my religion if I'm a jerk to you, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people in my religion have done that. So a lot of people are clouded. So that's why I started Life's Best Medicine, because there's a lot of people who've done a lot in low carb, but they also have a great spiritual story, right? They have something where they pull when they were hurting and they go, what do you lean on? Faith. But I was like, I don't want to do a bait and switch with people. They want to hear low carb. I don't want to talk about faith if they don't want to hear it. So it was a hard thing for me. And so in the back of my mind, I would say the Lord said, Brian, you got to do this other podcast. Talk about what else matters. It's not just about what you put in your mouth. It's how you look at life. It's how your stress level is. It's how, if you hate people around. So, that interview with Zuby really impacted me because I have a fear of man. I don't want to offend people. I don't want to be brutal, but I also don't want to just cower in the corner and not say what I believe. So it's a dichotomy, right? It's a conflict of interest to some degree, but I also can't preach the Bible to you if you don't believe the Bible. So what good is that? So I'm like, look, let me tell my story. Like I had atheists really seriously for 3 days attack me after I said I had faith. For 3 days, they had nothing better to do than attack me because I have faith, right? If you say, look, I want to be tolerant of all people, but I'm not going to be tolerant of you because I don't like what your faith is. Like, I don't tell my Muslim friend you're wrong. I just go, dude, why do you believe what you do? And I've learned a lot about his faith. He's learned about mine, right? We're not trying to convert each other. It's just what it is because we love each other. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care who you sleep with. I just tell people, look, I love you as a person. I don't care what you're, whatever, all these things that if you want to dress up in a different way or whatever. I don't care, man. You're a cool person. I like you. So anyways, that's how I think we need to view life that way. But I think what happens is we get so tribal in our beliefs, right? So people, if you're not carnivore, if you have a piece of, an olive, you're not a carnivore anymore. You're out of the club. Oh, if you're Christian, you do this, you're out of the club. If you do this, so you start looking, it's like, gosh, guys, does it really matter if it works for them? It's cool, right? If they're trying to convert me, so for me, if I gain 30 pounds, you go, Brian, I don't think your diet's working very good, right? I mean, I have a responsibility to that. I have to work out. I have to take care of myself because otherwise, like, why should I listen? And I wasn't the right messenger for low carb. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the messenger. I'm not Ted Naiman. I know that, but people, when they know you have struggles, they know. If I go, look, I'm perfect and my life's great and I have no problem, no one wants to, like, we all know that's not true. I have issues. I get annoyed with people. I get all this stuff, right? So I think I naturally am an optimist. I think I see, but I'm a realist too, and I see stuff. And for me, I think really, I will have more grace for people when they speak what they think is truth, but they're wrong. I have grace for that. Like, I've been wrong. You've been wrong. I've changed my views on stuff that a year ago I'd say, nah, it's not true. But I think when we personally attack each other, we lose credibility. Yesterday, I saw that happen with Jason Fung, who's been a huge influence in my life. I know his integrity behind the scenes. I actually have an interview with him coming out that I think will shame people because they're going to say I falsely judged this guy based on what he's saying and what matters to him and what's important. And it was like pulling teeth because he doesn't like to talk about himself, right? But I go, Jason, what matters? Like, you're asking me what matters. If I make all the money in the world and I'm a jerk, like my dad said when I was a kid, he goes, he put these things in my brain and said, look, if you have all the money in the world and you could would you rather sit in the best restaurant all by yourself or sit on the floor and have a hot dog with your best friend? Right. Well, now a hamburger, but back then I wasn't keto. So, I'd rather sit with my best friend. My wife and I, it's like, we've been through hard times and that brought us closer together. So I think for me, my faith is what I lean on and I want to be a good representative. I'm not all the time. I will admit that. And as a matter of fact, one of my old employees from my old practice has joined me. It's a miracle, but she's one of my favorite people. And she goes, Brian, you're a totally different person than you were there. Because I was stressed, tense, worried. I didn't have time. Someone wanted to show me a picture of their grandkids. I'm thinking, dude, I want to get home. I don't want to look at your grandkids. I don't really care, right? I do care, but not right now because I got 5 phone calls to make and I got to do that. So I think when we get in those situations, I think a lot of those people are in that situation. And Zuby said this. I'm quoting an Oxford trained rapper for people who don't know, but he goes, look, Brian, when they pick on people, it's a reflection on them, not you. right? It's a reflection on them. When you're having the success and they want to attack you, it's a reflection on them because they're not happy. They're miserable people. Wherever they go, they're going to be like that. So you start to look at, as a matter of fact, my partner, she's a fantastic person. She's doing great stuff. She's doing, she has 45,000 followers on TikTok. And she goes, yesterday she was down. I go, what's wrong? She goes, people were criticizing my eyebrows, right? When Troy and I started the podcast, people criticize stuff, then create something that you like better. Create something, because the creators are the ones who aren't picking on other people. The ones who are Dr. Unwin, do you see him ragging on people? No, he's class act. So I want to be like that. Dr. Ludwig is taking heat, and he's decent and kind back. He's not saying you're a jerk. So on the other token, I had an interview with Sean Baker, who, by the way, is like one of the most remarkable people I know. Really, honestly, like what he's been through in life, it's shocking to me. Really, it took me aback a little bit. The wisdom he has and his, but he goes, I go, Sean, why are you so brutal with people online, on Twitter? And he goes, Brian, for a year and a half, I tried. I showed him the science. I showed him my results. I showed him testimonies, all this stuff. And they say, we want to kill your kids. We hope your kids die. We hope I want to be the one to intubate you because of what he eats, really. And so my low carb and keto people, I see them go, you're vegan, you're terrible. They're good people, right? You're Democrat, you're Republican, you're black, you're white, you're a cop, you're a middle-aged white man who's Christian. Yes, I am. So, there's good and bad in all religions. There's good and bad in all professions. There's doctors who I'm ashamed of. There's doctors I'm very proud of. There's med students who I really don't care for. There's med students I think are great, right? So, and we've seen that. You and I, we see that you see some people, they have lists of people that have accomplished great things. They've never done anything yet with their life, but they've criticized everyone else. So you have your podcast. People are going to say, well, why'd you have Brian? Why didn't you have the lighting right? What? It's the content. It's the content that matters, right? If your dog barks or something happens, get over it. So we would get complaints like you have this brilliant discussion. And so Twitter, someone loses 200 pounds and you look at them like, oh my gosh, that's great. And I'm always going to be uplifting that person. People go, oh my gosh, look at that loose skin. That's disgusting. Why would you say that? Right? This kid we talked about too, this kid with Down syndrome, first one ever in the history of the world to run a triathlon.
Oh yeah.
People thumbs down it. Like, how do you thumbs down that? Right? Yeah, thumbs down it. I see it like everything. Jason gives his talk and these people like, why? Like, why? If I don't like something, I just go, okay, I'm not going to watch. Like you, if I didn't like your podcast, your attitude, I wouldn't be here, first of all. And second of all, I wouldn't be like criticizing you all the time. If I don't agree with you, I was like, okay, I don't agree with them. If you're dangerous, I'll call you out probably. Behind the scenes probably. But these guys are ragging on Jason yesterday. I go, and he's done more. Like, if honestly, and we're not really close friends, but we have a respect. I have a respect for him for sure. I don't know, maybe he'll tell you something different, but I think, man, you're attacking this guy. Have you ever talked to him about what you're saying? He didn't say that. I'm just saying he didn't say it. So I've had times where I say something and it's like telephone. By the time it gets down to the bottom, they said you said something, it wasn't even what you said. And then all of a sudden, all these people are attacking you. It's like, I look at the first one, I didn't say that. So I've seen people like that. And even if there's someone there's one person that I think is a what's the word? Sociopath, maybe, right? Someone's house burned down and he celebrated their house burning down. I'm like, how could you possibly ever celebrate another human being, no matter what, going through a horrible thing like that and not having compassion for them and caring? So right there, I'm like, that's an easy block, right? You could disagree with me. You and I could disagree. You go, Brian, I think your theory is stupid about this. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you think? And maybe I learned something and maybe you learned something. I think the big thing on Twitter is we need to have the ability to disagree in a place where we can mutually say, oh, okay, I kind of see what you're saying. But if I say you're an idiot, you're a jerk, no wonder your wife left you, then what does that have to do with the discussion? Nothing. So I think that's what happens when people don't have a good argument or they're not solid in what they believe, right? So when people attack my faith, I kind of laugh and go, dude, you're not going to convince me. Like, we're wasting Twitter time because you're not going to convince me and I'm not going to convince you. So why are we having this discussion? If you want me to prove if aliens go to heaven or not, I can't prove any of that. If you want me to prove what Jason Fung thinks, I can't. I don't know what's in his brain, but I can tell you what I've seen in his actions and what kind of person he is. And I can tell you that he was the one who had integrity with the podcast, that we're not going to take a dime from industry, right? He goes, because it's perception. We all have integrity, but it's the perception, because people always say, oh, you took money from the steak company, so you're telling everyone to eat meat. No, we already believed that before. Like, he does green tea. He said that for years and years and years and years. Now everyone's criticizing, but no one criticizes the vegan who's paid by the Cherry Growers Guild or whatever. See what I'm saying? There's such a double standard. And I think all of us have to look back and and really try not to have a double standard and judge people and say, I see where he's coming from, because we all have different worldviews, right? My worldview is going to be different than yours. So I think when we can respectfully say, yeah, I don't see it that way, but I can see why you think that. Okay, cool. right? I'm not going to convince you. You're not going to convince me. We could be okay and we could still be friends. Because look, 99% of the stuff we agree on. We may disagree on who the president should be. We may disagree on religion. Okay, let's not talk about that then, right? Unless you have something constructive. So some of the greatest discussions I've had in my life are people with totally different views, and like you still love the person at the end of the day and go, okay, I see where you're coming from. Cool, right? I don't think any of
Yeah.
us want to be told we're wrong, right?
No, no,
You know,
we don't
unless
want
we're
that.
wrong.
Yeah, unless we are, and we have the predisposition to take constructive criticism. But just to comment on Dr. Fung, I think people are extremely unfair with him because look, there are certainly some geeky, mechanistic aspects that I would take issue with him on. But of course that would happen. I mean, how could it not happen if you're two people scouring the medical literature and coming up with your own independent conclusions? Of course, you're not going to come to exactly the same conclusions on every single thing. And I think people forget that it's fine for someone to be wrong, even on something important. I'm not saying that being wrong is just neutral. Being wrong is consequences sometimes when it comes to medical stuff. But I'm saying that it's not more important than being able to determine that someone is acting in good faith and someone is actually achieving real world results that are making a difference in people's lives. And I think people lose sight of that and they just like to score a point. Basically, there's some, I don't know, some biochem student, they're 22, they're cocky, they're kind of smart, and they say, oh, Dr. Fung made a mistake in this thing about, I don't know, fasting or calories, or even just the wording of the phrase with calories in it. And they'll harp and they'll harp and they'll say, oh, look, he's such a kook. I'm like, it's kind of like a very big, strong guy beating up a 12-year-old skinny kid. No one's impressed by that. Like, that's not what you're here to do. Say he's wrong, explain why, and move on. Like, you don't have to keep harping on those things. And honestly, sometimes it's just pure lies. So there's not much you can do about that except ignore them or block them or something. But sometimes it's people not being generous enough. People who adopt a lot of low carb stuff, and other doctors who are doing pretty much what Jason is doing, but they have very different explanations for why it's working. It's so stupid to agree on the benefit it brings people and yet go to war over the reason why it works. It's
the same thing, man.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like the same thing in the Christian church. They're arguing, well, this quote means this. It doesn't mean this. It's like it's not inherent to my faith, and it doesn't matter to me really, right? If pre-trib, post, I mean, people get these huge debates and fights within the keto community. There's people who are fighting like, look, cut out process. The vegans and the carnivores, look, cut out processed foods. Fall to the end of the spectrum that works for you. Cool. I don't care, right? Like, count your macros if you need. A lot of people, most of my people don't even count macros, and they're having great success. So people say you need to count macros. Well, they lost 44 pounds and their sugar's under control, and they lost weight, and their blood pressure medicine is off. And like, do they have to count macros if they're doing fine? If they're not hungry, do they have to eat? Right. So I think what happens is, in medicine in particular, that's why engineers, guys who come from the outside, do better, because they go, look, this doesn't make sense. Doctors just go, that's what I was told, so I'm going to do it. So LDL cholesterol should be less than 130. Well, one of your triglycerides are 900. Does that make a difference? Yes, it does. You have to look at the big picture. So I think that's it. What's your insulin? Like Ben Bickman, and he is a guy who, he does not say it unless it's true, right? He doesn't, like, I may use imprecise language and get in trouble for that sometimes, because I go, insulin resistance, high sugar, whatever, because I'm just looking at it clinically and they're looking from a very scientific standpoint. So I go, Ben, look, if I have the choice of having a really high insulin or really high LDL cholesterol, which is my best bet? And he started laughing. He goes, Brian, I'll just hit that one out of the park. LDL cholesterol, of course, right? LDL cholesterol, of course. You don't want to have a high insulin. High insulin is going to mess up the LDL cholesterol. So he's like, he gets it, right? But what I'm saying is, like, look, you could debate, is LDL bad? Is it good? Well, it depends on the situation. Is a kid going to be good or bad? It depends where they grow up. Right? You and I are going to have different worldviews based on where we grew up. If I grew up in a different country, I might have a different perspective on things. I may not like, certain, it's one of those things. I think when you're around more and you kind of just are reason, like you and I can have a discussion. If we disagreed, we would be respectful and go, okay, I can see where you're coming from. Oh, I'm changed. Who I respect are people who, like Professor Noakes. I look at their motive and I go, this guy was the most decorated scientist in South Africa's history. He changes his tact and gets reamed. Goes to trial. He has the data and he's right. Jason Fung, the same thing. He went through. I go, why'd you not quit? Like, they said, just don't talk about this and we'll drop all the charges, because he knew he was right and it was integrity, right? Gary Fetke, he gets paid the same to amputate a foot as to do a total knee replacement. He can amputate a foot in like, I think it's like Sean Baker was telling me, it's on the podcast. I think it says, he said it takes like 6 minutes because you have to tie off two arteries, a vessel, a couple of vessels and some nerves. He goes, a knee replacement takes like 20 times longer. The reimbursement is the same. And these guys are costing themselves. Why? Because they care about people. That's clear, right? So if I make my patients healthier and they don't have to see me every week, if I charge them every time they come in, then I'll make more money if I see them more frequently, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff when you go. I always look at vested interest when people said there might be a problem with the PCR testing. I'm like, what's their vested interest, right? People who are making money off it might have a different vested interest. So when you step back and you look and like, wow, because we'll see, but I think over time we're going to say there were some crimes against humanity committed for money, and we sold people out.
Yeah,
at some
I
point.
think it's a travesty what happened, and I'm glad to finally see some interviews with some human rights lawyers who are talking about the legality of all of this, and how this falls under even certain laws that were around, even how you wage war, and how parliamentary decisions, if you're talking about the UK, are made, and the sort of limits on freedom that have been imposed. And I think that's a super serious topic that hopefully won't get swept under the rug in the coming years, because we can't have that happen again.
It can't. I think now we're going to look at it, because I'm on the front lines of medicine. I'm a low carb guy, but guess what? I see patients. Guess what I'm seeing? Depression, anxiety, suicidality, all these things. They're the harsh truth of what we're facing. I've sat with people crying because their business that they've had for 30 years is gone. Right. I've seen them have to lay off their employees. I've seen people, can't get chemotherapy because everyone's afraid to see them. I've seen people that treated. I mean, when you see the ramifications of what we've done, it's hard because we're just looking at one little aspect. For me, as a primary, I have to look at everything. I don't say, well, at least you didn't die of heart disease. Yeah, you died of cancer, but okay, you died, but at least it wasn't heart disease, right? So I think it's all those things, and that's why when I looked at Life's Best Medicine, the reason I brought the podcast was like, look, all these things matter. Ben was right. All these things matter. It's like having, Ben Bickman. We're in a meeting. He's like, oh, sorry guys, I got to go. I'm going trampoline with my son. I'm not going to miss it. Right. You've got the best scientists in the world all together in one room. He's like, I told you guys I had to go, right? Because he has his priorities in line. Good. Go to trampoline. Go. What's wrong with you, man? You're going to spend time with family instead of me, right? But the point is, look, he knows what's valued and what's important, and he's going to live longer than most people because of that. So I think these kind of things, and what I'm saying is like the other thing with the podcast, I'm not trying to sell the podcast. I'm self-funding and I don't have
Please
any
do.
sponsors.
And let's wrap up. So sell us the podcast and tell people Twitter, the podcast, and all of that, and we can wrap up.
Yeah, Twitter, it's at Brian Lenskis. My website here for my practice is lowcarbmdsandiego, all one word, .com. And so, so the podcast, obviously Low Carb MD, which we've been doing a lot in the low carb realm. And then the one, Life's Best Medicine, I really love, because it's like, what's the rest of the story? Like, what do you do for life? What matters? Like, you're on your deathbed, what really matters? Because I think we lose focus of that. And I think once we say, well, what matters to me? Is it my faith? Is it my family? Is it my job? Is it my car? Because a lot of us, I mean, some of these interviews I have, I mean, for me, I've gained every time, because people, like, I've had people that, had their lives, like they had the gun to their head and something said, you know what, change what you're doing. I mean, there's some powerful stories out there. And I'm like, look, I don't want to lose one person. If I can help one person to say, you know what, I think, I've had, seriously, this week, I had at least 8 people tell me, I started going back to church, or, I started yoga again, or I started, I always loved to paint. Now I'm doing that. It helps give me peace. Because if you're watching the news and stressed out and hate the world, those are the people who are going to go on Twitter and attack people, right? Because what I find is the people who are the happiest. Jason Fung said it well. He said, look, it's all about helping other people. When you live just for yourself, for your ego, for your promotion, for your business, it's for nothing. Helping people is where it comes from. So what I do now, I'm helping people. So every day I'm rewarded. I go home and I feel like I made a difference today. When you're not making a difference and you're digging dirt and throwing it back in, it doesn't, you're not accomplishing anything. So if I just keep you alive, but you're miserable and in pain and suffering and depressed and anxious, and I could just throw you a pill, that's not good enough. Right. So I think when we start seeing people get better, man, there's no better. That's why I say, look, for me, that's one of life's best medicine. One is hanging out with my wife and kids and throwing the ball and let the dog run and get it, go to the park, go for a walk, go to the beach, go to the mountains, get away from people. Right. So I think it's, in life, you start realizing, what matters, friendship, You know, right now, I think right now it's coming to a head because a lot of us are realizing I'm not bonding. Yesterday, I could put my hand on a lady's shoulder and just cry with her, and like she's all good. It helped. It was healing.
Yeah.
There was no medicine involved. So I think those kind of things, when we see it, we go, you know what? It's not just about like eating keto. It's not all about low carb. There's more to the story, and you have to look at the big picture always. So if we lose our integrity, I think that's the biggest tragedy of all. When I see people lose their integrity or question others when their integrity is poor, you know, it's like, I know what I'm getting at is I know a lot of these people behind the scenes. So that's why it's important to me to say, hey, Sean Baker, what gives you motivation? Jason Fung, you know, people from the street that lost 300 pounds. Like, how'd you do it? How'd you take that first? Because there's someone out there that needs that message, right?
Yeah,
So
they
if
need
I could be
to
the
hear
conduit,
it.
I hear
Yeah,
stories. I'm like, you did what? How did you do that? Like, that's crazy.
right.
Like, I just interviewed Zach Bitter, who they uphold as a low
Yeah,
carb. You know, he's
incredible.
like his mindset. It's amazing. You know, we didn't talk about faith. We talked about how do you're 23 miles behind someone on a 100-mile race, and everyone's yelling at you to go. What do you do? He goes, you run your race. He said, I passed him on mile 96 out of 100.
Wow.
After being behind 23 miles, like that kind of stuff, you go, oh my gosh. I would have saw that and go, okay, I'm done, guys, out, right? So, but when you have a passion, that's his thing, you know? So anyways, those kind of things, you see this, like, why is it that you're doing what you're doing? You know, is the app so you can make more money? Is it that you can help people? Or you see that I wish I had this tool. So I'm seeing great people like you doing stuff to help people because you're saying, man, I would like to have this, right? Keto Mojo, you know, all these guys, their stories are fantastic. So I just love to be the conduit for, you know, saying, hey, look, that you might say it's all garbage, but I think everyone I've talked to says that they're getting something out of it at least. I think more than watching the Kardashians for an hour, I think hearing someone's story that comes from, you know, from having trouble or, you know, being ready to die, then all of a sudden, like they have hope. Now they're helping everyone. That would have been a lost life. And you'll be surprised how often that happens where people just lost all hope and they just like had nothing to turn to. So I'm like, turn to something, whatever. I don't care what it is. Find something that works for you. So
Yeah, and
sorry for rambling so long, man, but I
no,
really
no,
appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure, and we could talk for much longer. But you're such an inspiration when it comes not only to your attitude, but your positivity and the sincerity and authenticity with which you approach all of it. The clinical side to your interest in what makes people tick, and the people behind the Twitter handle, so to speak. So I think it's fantastic that you're starting that podcast. You're the perfect guy to explore those questions, and I'm glad that the low carb space has someone like you taking the lead on that, because like you said, it's more than just diet. Ultimately, we're searching for health. So man, I'll be on the lookout. We'll make sure to include the links in the description below. And thanks for taking the time and coming on, man.
Thanks for asking me. I'm honored. It was an honor. When you asked me, I was like, he wants me? Okay, cool. I'll do it. So I appreciate it. No, I appreciate all you're doing and look forward to all your stuff, and, love what you're putting out there too. I think we're of the same cloth of trying to say, let's help people. Let's have fun along the way and enjoy each other. And then someday we'll sit down and have a glass of wine and talk about life, man.
Yes. Let's do that soon. As soon as we can travel, we have to meet up, and we have to meet up with Tro as well and shoot the shit. All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. That's a plan. Have a good one. Thanks again.